Thank you very much, Dina, for that very kind, thoughtful, warm, and accurate introduction. I'm honored to follow my colleague, Mike Conway, and I see Jim here from the government, and I suspect there are a few other members who's been serving on the House Ag Committee. I know because Jim and I have had a number of conversations on this because of this issue. He is passionate about the issue of hunger, and not only in our country but around the world. And really what this gathering is not only celebrating the 65th anniversary of this remarkable Food for Peace program that President Eisenhower signed into law in 1954. Think about that. But also because it's about children. It's about children, and it's about people around the world. And for those of my colleagues who have had the opportunity to try to see what America is trying to do in terms of a constructive foreign policy, we're reminded of the fact that with climate change, famine and hunger sadly exists around the world, notwithstanding our best efforts. In this case, with this Food for Peace program over 65 years. You know, I like to remind people of, I kind of collect facts and sometimes I remember them. But 200 years ago, the planet was estimated to be approximately about 1.7 billion people. 200 years later, actually a couple years ago, we clicked 7 billion people. Think about it, in 200 years we've gone from 1.7 to 7 billion plus, and it's estimated by maybe the middle of this century that we could add another 2 billion people. So with climate change, with sea levels rising, for those of us who come from an agricultural background, as was noted, I always tell folks, food is a national security issue. I mean, the majority of Americans obviously don't think of it that way. As a matter of fact, I lament oftentimes that there's a real disconnection between the majority of Americans and where their food comes from. I mean, for the majority of Americans, I mean, we've been very fortunate, let's face it. They think food comes from a grocery store or a restaurant. I mean, that's where they get their food, right? They don't understand the challenge of getting that food, to grow that food, and then to get that food to the places where people can use it every day for their nourishment. Because we cannot live without food, as Mike noted in his experiences. As chairman of the House Agricultural Subcommittee on Livestock and Foreign Agriculture, and a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, I think there's a good nexus. The subcommittee that I chair also has a jurisdiction of the Food for Peace program. We had a lot of differences in last year's Farm Bill and arm wrestling and trying to work them out. But I think there was a strong bipartisan agreement on the Food for Peace program. But let's think about it in different ways. Let's think about it as a global food security system. A global food security system, because that's what we're talking about. And if we're going to have another 2 billion people on the planet, and by the middle of this century or so, and we're having climate change and sea levels rising, the ability to create sustainable agriculture in many parts of the world is one of our greatest challenges. And to have the water to make sure that you can have that sustainable food supply is critical. We have a saying out where I live, in California, we either have more snow and water than we can use or not enough. But where water flows, food grows. And that's real, that's true. So this program brings, I think, together, and this is the exciting part, all of what you're doing, a unique cross-section of stakeholders. And the program designs and funding mechanisms to really try to provide a hand up. And that's why I'm so proud to be a supporter of your efforts. You're where the rubber meets the road. You make it happen. Folks like Jim and I try to give you the resources to make sure you can he can make it happen. And so you have my commitment to continue to fight for the Food for Peace program as the subcommittee chair. We haven't held a hearing in a while on this, and I think we need to do that later this year. And I know Jim and my other colleagues will want to be there, and as we talk about an agenda that really reflects your needs and where you think we could make it better in terms of our response to give you the tools you need. Let me give you some numbers. Again, I collect these. The Food for Peace program reached approximately last year 76 million people in 59 different countries. I hope I got those numbers right. Right? 76 million people in 59 countries, including 68 million people with emergency assistance and 8 million people for development assistance. But when you think about the size and the dimensions of this challenge, we clearly must do better. We must do better. Because millions of people face hunger and food security on a daily basis. On a daily basis. Even some here in our country, sadly, where we produce more than we can possibly consume. But it all results in the same threats. And that's the threats to those who are most vulnerable. Children. Children and their parents' lives and livelihood. And it also has, if not a direct, an indirect connection, I believe, to conflict in the world. Because, there are ingredients that come together to create conflict. And we know that one of those ingredients to create conflict is famine. And you see many of the war-torn areas around the world, hunger is a part of the circumstance that those folks are dealing with. So let me close by saying that the organizations that are represented here this afternoon, we salute you, we commend you, we thank you. Interaction, Action Against Hunger, Bread for the World, CARE, Catholic Relief Services, Food for the Hungry, the Hunger Project, the Mercy Corps, Save the Children, the World Food Program, USA, World Vision, and others work on the ground to provide emergency food services, a lot of times with our international partners. And we have some tremendous international partners, not only with the United Nations, but the European Union does a tremendous amount that makes a difference. And we should thank them as well. So in time of crisis, we know that we need to be looking at long-term solutions. And so let me close where I started off. Food is a national security issue. Food is a security issue around the world. And I'm proud that this program does a significant part to deal with that. But I believe we can do better. And I think working together, we'll put together a subcommittee hearing, and you can tell us how we can figure out ways to do it better. And all I want to do is say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Keep up the good work. You make a difference every day. God bless.